Hi coaches, Mike Kuchar, Senior Research Manager at XNO Labs, www.xnolabs.com. Today we're going to share with you the 92 mesh concept. Coach Mike Leach at Texas Tech, former Coach Mike Leach at Texas Tech, has been gracious enough to share some of his information on this concept. It's something that he's done as an offensive coordinator for years, and then as a head coach, had tremendous success at Texas Tech, as we all know, training his quarterbacks to run this scheme and to run this concept. And for our third part installment with Coach Leach, he's been gracious enough to share some of his thoughts and his philosophy behind the scheme. So we're going to take you through the philosophy of the play first, and then we'll get into the route structure, and then finally we'll conclude with some video cut-ups of some of the things he used to do. The philosophy of the play is a crossing route. Now, a lot of schemes do run this. A lot of teams do run this scheme. Okay, mainly inside crossers, shallows, unders. It's very common in high school and college football today. It's best run out of 2x2 or 3x1 formations, which is what Coach Leach majored in at Texas Tech. He loved to come out in doubles. Okay, 2x2 is a balanced set. He talked about the symmetrical set of doubles, and what it produces is a cleaner read for the quarterback. He does like 3x1 as well, running the scheme out of 3x1. It's a controlled passing scheme that is productive against any blitz. Again, the quarterback could see everything in front of him with this mesh concept, so it's easier to get the ball out. It's a layered route that stretches the field horizontally and lets your players catch and run in space. We all know that Coach Leach has had tons of success with receivers, particularly Michael Crabtree, with excellent receivers who catch the ball and run in space, and this is something that lets your players do that. And it's relatively easy to tag or change pre-snap. Okay, any of those receivers can be tagged as the crosser. Okay, and in the scheme, and it doesn't matter who it is. It's up to you as a coach to nominate that person. Some general route concepts of the receivers. Coach Leach is different in what he does with the outside receivers. They run a corner out at 8 to 10 yards. And Leach will set the angle based on coverage. So what he'll do is, in a typical zone coverage, those receivers are asked to split the difference between the corner and the safety. Now, when you play Mike Leach's offense, you're going to play a lot of too-high coverages, whether it's too-high man, as we'll see at Texas A&M a couple years back, whether it's just straight cover 2 or quarters coverage. To him, those receivers are the first read for the quarterback, those outside receivers. If it's any type of man coverage, those receivers are going to run a square out to the sideline and break that thing off and get 90 degrees to the sideline. The inside receivers are going to run the mesh concept. So the player on the right is designed for setting the mesh, and Coach Leach talks about 6 yards as his target landmark for the mesh point, or underneath the Mike linebacker, okay, whichever comes first. Now, the player on the left, his job is to get shoulder to shoulder on the player on the right. He doesn't talk about levels. He just gets shoulder to shoulder and get underneath the player on the right. Okay, so the player on the right in Leach's system, for the most part, will set the mesh. And again, you could tag that, you could change that however you like. We actually have some cut-ups of Coach Leach doing it differently at times, but traditionally in his offense, the player on the right will set the mesh point. There's going to be a flat threat, usually on either side, a running back to expand to the flat defender, giving receivers more room to run. Okay, so that opens up, and that, we found that to be the key. You know, getting that receiver out there and getting that running back out there in space to draw the flat defenders, that outside linebacker, so the mesh could happen naturally. General route concepts for the running backs, like we talked about. The running back is designed to get out. Coach Leach, he likes to send 5 and 6 wide. He likes to have his 5 offensive linemen block, so he's going to get him out there and try to be a receiver, and we'll show you some cut-ups of that in a second. 5-man protection rules for the offensive line, big-on-big protection. If the play side linebacker does not blitz, who is a running back's responsibility, now he's going to get to the numbers to create space, to draw that flat defender. The more players you set out into the route, the more option the quarterback has. Coach Leach is big on this. We want to get the ball to his athletes. He's always had traditional running backs that could run in space, so it's something that he benefits by getting the ball in their hands. Option is to tag the running back to release pre-snap and avoid protection responsibilities. If there's a blitz and he knows it's coming, we talked about this in our last installment with Leach's offense, quarterback can audible, can adjust to get that running back out to the flat right away. And a variation out of the mesh is for the running back to run to the seam to create a vertical space in coverage, which we'll show you in a second here. Quarterback's reads in the mesh, the outside receivers are the first read, as we had discussed. He's going to attack the looser corner. The quarterback will check to see where the looser corner is. If the corner is not where you want it to be, if he's not loose, an adjustment is to run that corner out into a post route, just to get him thinking, and again, to create leverage between the corner and the safety in too high coverage. In Leach's system, the quarterbacks read open receivers, not defenders. That's important as we watch some tape here. A lot of coaches, offensive coordinators talk about reading defenders, reading areas of the field. Coach Leach always talks about throwing to the open receiver. That's why he's been so productive in spreading the ball around throughout his years. Typical read progression is the corner out, number 1. The mesh receiver, so the receiver coming on the cross to that corner side as a number 2 progression. Number 3 would be the running back to the side of the mesh, and number 4 is the backside mesh. As you'll see on tape, the quarterback rarely gets to number 4, so in actuality, it really is a half-field read for that quarterback. Any 3-by-1 adjustments in trips. Okay, Coach Leach does like to run it out of trips, just talks about defensive coordinators being uncomfortable when he sees this. The number 2 receiver will expand to the flat. Okay, the back will take to the other side. The number 2 receiver to the side of the trips. The single receiver, the X, which is usually the dominant receiver, will run the mesh with the inside receiver across the formation. So number 1 to the left will mesh with number 1 to the right, and sometimes he will tag that X receiver on a solo route, okay, just to get the ball in his best receiver's hands. The front side receiver in the trips can still run the corner or post route. That does not change. And again, the benefits of trips, and we think this is important, is that most coordinators think of it more as a vertical formation. Okay, when you see in trips, and obviously Coach Leach has a ton of success running his 4 vertical passing game. Now with this, you get that horizontal stretch on defenses, and we'll talk about how he's done that by blowing off the top of the coverage and opening up those underneath passing lanes. Just a couple diagrams, simple diagrams. The 92 mesh route, okay, out of 2-by-2 formation. Okay, you have the Y right here. Okay, coming on the H setting it, the Y coming underneath, just a variation. Now it's set from the left, tail back out into the flat, and you got the 2 corner out by the outside receivers. Variation out of 2-by-2 is a post, okay, by the number 1 receiver here. Okay, just another change-up route. The mesh is occurring still now. Now the mesh is occurring with number 1 to this side, so it's tagged with the X and the Y over here. So you have a flat threat through the H and a flat threat through the T. Both receivers get into the numbers. Out of typical 3-by-1, okay, the X and the Y are working the mesh concept. You have the T working the flat to draw coverage out to the numbers. Okay, to this side, you got the H working the flat here and the Z on the corner route. And then finally, this is interesting, out of 3-by-1, another variation with the mesh route is now you have the X and the Y still working the mesh concept. The T is going to work right down the seam, okay, to the left side to, again, draw the top off the coverage to get the underneath available, and the H is going to get vertical to draw the top off the coverage to clear out for the Z. So the Z will just run that squaring at about 12 yards, okay, to get the ball in the hands of the best receivers in space and to open up those vertical passing, the horizontal passing lanes. Okay, so there you have it. Just some general concepts of the play in Coach Leach's system. Now let's take a look at the videotape and how he puts this thing to work.